Hi everybody, I'm TychoCelchuuu, and this is a strategy/tactics video for Varesh, one of the champions in Battlerite. So Varesh is like a floating purple armored whatever the hell, and he's kind of, I don't know what he is. He's a ranged DPS/disable. I don't really know what he is, but we're going to go through his abilities, his special mechanics, his Battlerites, some basic tactics, and some Battlerite builds for this Varesh dude. So let's just start with the abilities. Hand of Corruption. Fires a projectile that deals 10 damage, heals self for 2 health, and inflicts corruption. Corruption reduces damage and healing done by 15% for 5 seconds. Oh god, it's already complicated. What the hell's corruption? So it's pretty simple. This is your bread and butter projectile. It's not super hard to aim. It's kind of slow, but not very slow. It does good damage. 10 damage is nothing to sneeze at. It also heals you right off the bat, so you just start nailing people with this and you're going to get some health. And corruption is two things. First, it's this blue semicircle around the enemy that starts to tick down. So that's really important. When you see this on yourself, when Varesh is attacking you, or you see it on an enemy, when your Varesh is attacking them, or when you see it on an enemy because you're Varesh, that means what they're doing is they're reducing they have 15% less damage and healing. So this is a great debuff to apply to anybody, right? It's a good debuff to apply to DPS that makes them less effective. It's a good debuff to apply to the healers. Hand of Judgment. Fire a projectile that deals 24 damage and inflicts Judgment. Judgment increases damage taken by 15% for 5 seconds. So this is a cool spell because it doesn't have any cooldown, right? You can just click it forever, and it does 24 damage, which is a lot of damage. 24 damage is nothing to sneeze at, but notice it's got a long animation, so I'm canceling it right here, but it's like, man, that takes a long time to aim. So you definitely have to be in a safe, happy place to aim this, or you have to be backed into a corner getting wailed on. You're like, oh, I don't give a fuck, just take that. So either way, you gotta realize that there's going to have to be some time to channel that thing. And anyways, once you do it, it'll give you Judgment. Judgment increases damage taken by 15% for 5 seconds. So again, it shows itself in a circle, a wider purple circle around the base. And this is not going to be perfect on whoever you put it on, right? Like, remember with Corruption, this is good on a DPS or on a healer. It doesn't matter, whatever they're doing, it's less effective. This, it's only good against people who are going to get damaged. So if you hit this on somebody and then the rest of your team is over focusing this motherfucker and you're over here focusing this motherfucker, there's no advantage to having Judgment on this person. So pick your Judgment targets well. Presumably if you're able to land a Judgment thing, that's the sign for the rest of your team to start DPSing that person, but just keep that in mind. Space. Inhibitor's Guard. Shield a target ally. Shield absorbs up to 28 damage, also shields you. So if you want to shield yourself, you can shield yourself. If you want to shield an ally, you shield an ally. It's really easy to get this on allies. I gotta go walk all the way. Well, let's go like this. That might not even be faster. Anyways, let's go find an ally. There we go. So, well, actually I clicked directly on that person. But it's pretty easy to shield your allies with this. You don't have to be like directly on them. You just have to aim in the basic general direction of them. The reason I'm waiting so long to reshield this guy is, notice the cooldown is 12 seconds. So that is nothing to sneeze at. See, I aim right over here and it got on that guy. That's a long cooldown for this thing. So choose your shield targets carefully, because you're not going to get another shield for a pretty long while. But it's a really good shield. 28 damage is a really good amount. So Wuju, this is your counter. Counter the next melee or projectile attack. Countering the attack teleports you behind the attacker, dealing 10 damage and stunning it. Watch this. Blammo, stun, motherfucker. You end up a pretty good distance behind him too, so you don't have to worry that you're going to be right at somebody. And the important thing is that you're going to notice as we go through, not only is this guy fat and slow, but he basically has no reposition mechanics. Aside from this counter, he's only got one other, and when we get there, you're going to notice it costs energy. So in terms of getting around the battlefield, you either want to be super duper cautious, staying far away from enemies so that they don't get a chance to kill you, or when you commit, it's got to be in a place where maybe you feel like you have a healer nearby or you're going to win the fight, or you use counter to reposition yourself, get behind some enemies, and then run the heck away. So that's that. Shatter. This one's important. Spawn an exploding shard at target location, dealing 12 area damage. Consumes Corruption to heal you for 8 health and snare the target. Consumes Judgment to deal 8 bonus damage and silence the target. Then it describes the snares and the silence, and it's like, oh god, it's too complicated. I remember when I first read this guy. But it's pretty simple. So first, just how this spell works, you just target anywhere Notice it's got a pretty long range that you can cast it. I can get it all the way over to here. And the cooldown is not that bad either. It's a 5-second cooldown. So it's not a giant AoE, but it's an AoE large enough that with practice you can catch people in it. So it's a nice little damage thing, 12 damage. But the real action is when you start combining this with your Hand of Corruption or your Hand of Judgment or some other skills you have. Because once you get Corruption and or Judgment on these motherfuckers, and this thing pops, well, that guy died, so you can't really tell. And these dummies generally don't have enough health. Do these guys have a... No, these dummies need more health. Please fix the game. Anyways, once you start getting these status effects on people, consuming either of these, they're going to get you health if you consume Corruption. So this is a great way to heal up, especially if you're like trapped in a corner and somebody's just DPSing on you. Just nail them with this, that'll heal you for 2, but then you nail them for this, and then you'll heal up a lot, and you can just repeat that combo. So, well, he's dead, but then you just put it on him again, and then you put him on him again, and then since this recharges in 5 seconds, 5 seconds later, if you're still alive, you can do the same thing. But if you consume 2 sets of Corruptions, that'll be 16 health for you right there, plus the 2 Corruptions you inflicted, another 4 health. So that's 20 health right there. Inflicting Judgment on people won't give you anything, but so again with Corruption, if you nail them with this, it's also going to snare them, so that's your opportunity to maybe run away, or really importantly for your opponents to start hitting them with something, because they're going to be not moving for a while, or not moving very fast for a while. So this is a good way to lock down people. It's a good way to lock people down for your Hand of Judgment, because they're not going to be moving much, so you can nail them with a Hand of Judgment. And then if you've already hit them with a Hand of Judgment, or they otherwise have this purple thing around them, then when you hit them with them, it'll silence them, so they can't do anything to you. So if this is mostly good if you already have Judgment on them, because it's tough to get Judgment on someone really fast, because this has such a long wind up and there aren't a lot of other ways to inflict Judgment. But if somebody, like a character already has the pink circle around them, and you see them start winding up with some sort of spell, just bam, hit them with the silence. And that's the end of that spell for a little while, so that's really nice. And this is also good for eventually, you'll see with the Battlerites and stuff, sometimes there are other ways to get Judgment on people, and it's always nice to just add a silence in to whatever you're doing to people. And remember, anytime you consume Corruption, or anytime you consume Judgment, you deal 8 bonus damage, so also this is good for DPSing someone. If your allies have them locked down or something, if you can get them with Judgment, either with this or any other way to get the pink circle on them, that damage adds up pretty quick. So this Shatter is an important sort of component of your repository. Now remember, when you have Corruption and Judgment on people, they're doing things. So Corruption is reducing the damage and healing done by 15%, Judgment is increasing the damage they're taken by 15%, so it's not always in your best interest to consume them with Shatter. Sometimes you want to leave that circle on them for a little while, like maybe this person's healing somebody, and you want to let the Corruption stay on them for another like 6 seconds or whatever. How long does it last? 5 seconds. So not 6 seconds, but like 3 seconds, and then you consume it at the very end. There's not a lot of benefit to consuming it early on unless you need the snare or you need the silence or something. Ditto with the Judgment. So once you get the circle, you could just immediately try and consume it with Shatter, but maybe, give it a little time to breathe, like a good red wine. Give it a little time to screw with the opponent before you hit him with the Shatter and go in for the kill. R, Reform. This is super important. Warp to target location and shadow Judgment and Corruption effects. Consuming Corruption does what we know. It gives you health. Consuming Judgment does what we know. It silences the target. So, 1, this is a nice way to sort of consume Judgment or Corruption if you're either out of your Shatter or you missed your Shatter or something. The problem is, it's not like a huge... It's a good AoE, but it's not a very... Well, look at the cooldown. It's 15 seconds. So, it's a good AoE, but not a very good... Oh, we still have to wait. It's a good AoE, but not a very good way to catch people otherwise, because they have to be fairly close. This is the limit. So if they're moving pretty quick, it's probably easier to hit them with the Shatter, because it's got a much further range. But the other thing is, this is your only reposition, aside from somebody hitting a counter, or hitting you when you're countering. And if they don't hit you when you're countering, you're right back where you started. You're like, oh, I'm going to counter. I'm out of here, motherfuckers. And you're, oh, I'm back. So this is the only other way to get around the battlefield without just walking like an idiot. So it costs an energy, which is pretty expensive to reposition yourself. And again, you can't go very far, but it's a better alternative to dying. So if you're trapped in a really bad situation and it doesn't look like counter is going to happen, just hit R get out of there, and you're safe. So better than nothing, and that's pretty much it when it comes to repositioning. And again, this is a way to consume some stuff. So if you got some of these circles on some people, and for whatever reason Shatter's not in the cards, maybe just show up and be like, what's up, motherfuckers, I'm reformed. Finally, your ultimate. So this is fun. Dash forward in target direction, dealing 24 damage and inflicting both Judgment and Corruption on all enemies hit. The effect repeats itself up to 3 times as long as an enemy is hit. So what does that mean? Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. So I got to dash 3 times right there, because on the first dash I hit some people, on the second dash I hit some people, and then I get my third dash no matter what happens. And on that third dash I didn't hit anybody, but it doesn't matter. Notice if I do it like this, boom, I hit one person and then a dash, but then I don't get it. And if I do it like this, I hit nobody, so I only get 1 dash. So you really want to hit some people with this thing. I mean, you always want to hit people with your ultimate, but you really want to hit some people with this ultimate. So if you see Varesh, that's his name, right? I can't. Well, I think his name is Varesh. If you see this guy start dashing at you with his ultimate, don't get hit, otherwise the party will keep on going. So what happens when you hit him? Well, pretty straightforward. You do some damage, and also they get Corruption and Judgment. So consume that shit ASAP, and they are in a world of hurt. So that's some good stuff. His EX abilities are kind of neat. Hand of Punishment is like the all-purpose fuck some people up. Fire a projectile that deals 12 damage, heals you for 6 health, and inflicts both Judgment and Corruption. So if you can land one of these, which you can distinguish because it's red as opposed to purple, that's really unfortunate for whoever you hit. Not as much damage, right? Half as much damage, but you get some health, and suddenly they've got Judgment and Corruption. So again, nail them and consume that, and they are not happy. And then finally, Shatter turns into a fairly weird thing. It turns into Crush. Spawn an exploding shard at target location, dealing 12 damage and knocking area enemies back. What does knocking enemies back mean? Well, check this out. That's what knocking enemies back means. Look at that knockback. That's some knockbacky stuff. So if you ever need to knock somebody back, that's your thing. So this is nice if you're backed into a corner and you're just like, leave me alone. Obviously you want to hit them with it. Leave me alone, and they go somewhere else. So those are some weird EX abilities. I don't use either of these a whole lot. Probably I could be using Crush better, but I'm not good at this video game. So those are all of his abilities. I don't think Varesh has any cool special mechanics to talk about, so let's move on to talking about the Battlerites. Fracture. Ability charges to Shatter increase from 3 to 2, so this is pretty helpful, just because Shatters, it's not a bad DPS skill, like 12 damage with a 5-second cooldown. It's not like amazing or anything, but you can cast it obviously from anywhere, so you can be behind a thing and just spamming these out. And having 3 of these is also really helpful, just because hopefully you're going to be putting these status effects on all sorts of people all the time, and you always want to have a Shatter ready to consume it if need be. So there's nothing wrong with getting Fracture, I think. A very nice sort of ability to grab if you're going to be on the offensive or even on the defensive, because a lot of ways you're going to get healing is by hitting somebody with a Corruption and then consuming the Corruption. Break. Inhibitor's Guard explodes when the effect ends, dealing 8 area damage and inflicting Corruption on all nearby enemies. So remember I told you it's tough to get, well, this Judgment, it's tough to get, I said it's tough to get Judgment on people. It can also be tough to get Corruption on people if you have to reach out and touch them. It's nice to get your status effects on enemies without having to do any work. So the nice thing about Break is that if you go... Oh god, this is going to take forever to walk across this goddamn battlefield. If you go and this guy isn't even alive, and I don't think it's going to hit, even the AoE is not going to be large enough. Let's find out. Yeah, the AoE is not large enough. But if you have some sort of DPS on your team, some sort of melee DPS like a Croak or whatever, you hit them with the Break, you hit them with the Inhibitor's Guard, I mean, when you've upgraded Break, and they just run in and they're wailing on the enemy or whatever. And then when your shield finally pops, because we know it's going to pop, not only do you get a bit of AoE on the opponent, but you also get Corruption on the opponent sort of effortlessly. So you can be like DPSing somebody over here while you put your shield on a melee character who's over here fighting some other people, and then once it pops, you can just turn here, shatter them to snare them, and then go back to whatever you were doing over here. So this is a nice way to sort of reduce the amount of work you're doing in order to get your status effects on some people. So that's fun stuff. Return. If Wuju's triggered, you can recast it in 1.5 seconds. So this is a really hit or miss kind of thing. In that case it missed. That case it missed. That case it missed. that case, it hit, and now I can counter again. But the thing is, not only are you relying on somebody hitting you for this to work, right? Somebody's got to trigger your Wuju. You're relying on somebody hitting you again for it to mean anything. Or, I mean, not really, because like if you counter and then you get a recast and then you counter again, that'll keep you safe a second time. So this does make you like really hard to hit, and this is a really nice thing to just like, if your opponents have been wailing on you or something, or you expect they're going to wail on you because you choose this in round 1. I hope you can't hear the jet aircraft in the background. If your opponents are probably going to be wailing on you a lot, then grabbing this Wuju, they're pretty much just going to give up. It gets too frustrating because you just effectively always counter them. So if you want to be invincible, this is the thing to take. But again, you're only invincible insofar as your opponent is unfortunate enough to hit you in your first counter. So if your opponents are good enough not to hit you when you're first countering, this is effectively useless. So very hit or miss. Keep that in mind. Hand of Judgment deals 12 area damage on hit and inflicts Judgment. So this is just fairly straightforward, some extra DPS in terms of if your opponents are clumped up. I don't take this a lot just because it's already not the easiest thing to land a Hand of Judgment, and what are the chances that you're going to land it when somebody's in the AoE? I don't know. But if you're landing lots of Hands of Judgment, you got a hot Hand of Judgment, so to speak. Grab it and you'll be doing some really good DPS, so that's the thing. Cripple. Fading snare duration when corruption is consumed increases from 2 seconds, or to 2 seconds from 1 second. So you just consume this stuff and that's a bigger snare. So since a lot of your character is messing with opponents by getting corruption and judgment on them and then consuming it, there's definitely nothing wrong with buffing that up. So if you anticipate people are going to be chasing you or your allies a lot, if you anticipate you or your allies are going to be chasing a lot of people, any reason you need snares, this is your go-to Battlerite, because of course this increases your snares. So if your opponent's mobility is getting you down, this is the solution, or one of the solutions, especially since you have no real escapes other than your counter and your 1 energy teleport thing. This can be a nice sort of substitute thing. Keep the snare going for a while. Inhibitor's Guard heals target for 14 health. This is a pretty straightforward heal. It's really nice. Just pop it on people. 14 health is a pretty good amount of heal. You can use it on yourself, remember. You can use it on allies. So if you find yourself shielding a lot, which you really always should, it's got a long cooldown, but it should always be on cooldown. Pretty much there's no reason to not just be using your shield constantly, and the health is going to add up over time. So that's a pretty good Battlerite, I think. Silence. Silence duration when Judgment is consumed to 1 second from half a second. So you know the drill again. You got this pink thing on him, you consume it, which should be your bread and butter, and it's a longer silence. Not as many situations where it's as useful as the longer snare, simply because it's tougher, again, to get Judgment on people and then to consume it, but 1 second of silence is 1 second where they're really not doing anything. If you remember you've ever been silenced, there's not a lot that you're up to while you're silenced, so that's a really good debuff if you can get it on people, and nothing wrong with picking that. Ruin. Wuju inflicts judgment on enemies struck. So this is another thing that's dependent on enemies hitting you with the Wuju, but this can be a really nice thing to go, especially if you've doubled down on this, because then your opponents like really can't hit you. And if they do have the misfortune of fucking up and hitting you, then it's just a world of hurt because they've got judgment on them. And once they've got judgment on them, it's time to DPS, baby, because they're taking 15% extra. So if your opponent, like especially if you went this thing in the first round and they still haven't learned not to hit you, definitely go for that, and it's going to be Judgment Day. Oh, look, that's like a joke. Judgment Day, like Terminator. Anyways, it's going to be pretty good if you get that on. But again, it relies on them hitting you, so very risky if you're playing against good players. Lawbender. When Shatter consumes Corruption or Judgment, the cooldown of Inhibitor's Guard is reduced by 1 second. So Inhibitor's Guard is your shield. You always want the cooldown on that going down because it's got such a long cooldown in the first place. And if you've buffed the shield with the healing, or if you've buffed the shield with the corruption increase, that's some nice stuff. But either way, it's always nice to have your cooldown lower, and since you should be shattering people like 24/7, like 24/7 shatter people every day, this is really nice. It's going to be going lower on cooldown all the time, your Inhibitor's Guard. So I definitely recommend picking this up if you find yourself not thinking either of these are going to work for you, which I think is fairly often. Round 4, you got the straightforward things. Increases movement speed by 10%. Honestly, you're so goddamn slow with solo repositions in the first place. I'm not sure how much of a difference this makes, but you know, every bit counts. Increase your maximum energy by 25%. This is really nice because you're going to be using Reform probably a lot to get out of risky situations. So I think it's always nice to have that extra energy built up, and also it lets you Reform and then use your Powers Combined, which is a fun little skill, and Powers Combined itself is pretty great, so it's nice to charge that faster. So I think Inspiration is a pretty good choice on this guy, and then Synergy is some real cool stuff. If both Judgment and Corruption are active on their target, their effects increase from 15 to 20%, and both are reapplied by Hand of Corruption and or Judgment. So this means if you get this and this on somebody, you just hit them with either of them again, namely the blue thing, because that's what you're going to be doing, and they'll stay up effectively forever. So you're always, when you're playing this guy, making the choice between, do I get the debuff on the person and immediately consume it, or do I wait for a while and let the debuff go and then consume it later, or even not bother consuming it, just continue renewing the debuff. With this thing, you barely even have to choose, because once they're both on somebody, you can just keep that debuff going forever, or immediately consume it and get a lot of hurt on them. So this is really effective if you find yourself able to get Judgment on them, because remember, you need both Corruption and Judgment on the opponent for the renewal thing to work. But think about it, 20% for both of them. They're going to be doing 20% less damage, doing 20% less healing, and taking 20% more damage. That's like a big deal. So they're not going to be happy with those turret circles around them. And you can make them even less happier by consuming it. But if you've got both debuffs on them, maybe just keep it going, especially if your allies are wailing on them. So that's some good stuff. Round 5. Powers combined can hit allies, healing them for 14 health. So remember, to keep this thing going, you have to hit somebody on each of the dashes. And so this is really nice if the opponents start to like run away. Then you can sort of catch up to them by hitting one of your allies and then bouncing off to the enemy, or they just completely run away and you can't hit your opponents, so you're just like, okay, I guess I'm healing allies now, because your allies aren't going to run away from you. So this is a good way to keep it going. The jet outside is making noise. And then Eternal. When powers combine ends, gain Inhibitor's Guard. Pretty straightforward. Choose this, and look, I've got a shield now. So chances are you're going to want a shield when you pop it out of it, so why not? I tend to like this a bit more just because the utility of keeping this thing going and healing allies or just getting more damage on enemies is pretty good, but it's nice to get a shield coming out of it too, so make your choices there. And now let's talk about some general tactics for this guy. So as I've noted a couple times, you're big, you're slow, you're lumbering, and you have basically no repositions, so you really got to play carefully in the game. You don't want to get right into the mix. You want to stay a bit out of it, or if you do get into the mix, you want your sacrifice not to be in vain. So if they're all focusing on you, hopefully your allies are doing something really important, like DPSing the people who are focusing on you so that you can survive. If you do find yourself backed into a corner or attacked by enemies or something, obviously you have the repositions in terms of the counter and then the reform, but your other option, if you're stuck in close, is just try and out-heal them, because remember, you can heal and DPS at the same time. Hand of Corruption does 10 damage and heals for 2, and then consuming the Corruption is going to heal you for 8. So if you're backed into a corner, hit them with Corruption, consume the Corruption, hit them with Corruption, consume the Corruption, and pretty soon your health's going to go up fast. And that's not even counting putting the Inhibitor on you, which is going to be 28 health each pop. That's a lot of health. And then if you've got the Battlerite that gives you the healing on the Inhibitor, it's going to go 14 health a pop. If you've got the reduced cooldown on the Inhibitor, each time you consume, the shield is that much closer. So you have a lot of options if you find yourself getting wailed on by a melee DPS or even a ranged DPS, because ranged DPSs are not too tough to hit with your thingy and then also with your shatter too. So you can't exactly out heal DPS, but you can keep on healing long enough maybe for your allies to come up, or for your counter or your reform to come off cooldown, or for the energy for the reform to come up. So those are some options in terms of staying away. If you can nail this Hand of Judgment, take every opportunity to do so. Even just faking the Hand of Judgment and then canceling it partway through is often enough to get opponents either moving or using an escape tool or starting to turn on you to try and silence you or something, so that can take some pressure off of your allies or even yourself, because this wind-up is really long and obvious and they start to know what's coming and they're scared of what's coming for good reason. So faking the Hand of Judgment or just straight up using the Hand of Judgment, pretty good. Well, I fucked up that, but 2 Hand of Judgments is enough to almost kill the ball. And so if you're undisturbed in the middle or even fairly far away, because look at the range on this thing. If you're standing on the edge of the middle and the ball shows up, nail it with a couple Hand of Judgments maybe, and that'll secure the ball for your team. And then finally, don't be afraid to spam Shatter with its nice AoE and the damage that it does. It's best if you can consume Corruption and or Judgment. Judgment's good because you get damage. If you don't need the health, then there's no need to consume the Corruption, but you probably need the health. But this thing, you can cast it from anywhere. It's got a really good long range. You should get good at predicting where opponents are going and hit it on them. And the other important thing is that it's going to force them to either move or eat the Shatter. So for a lot of the ranged DPS heroes, like that lady with the rocket launcher or whatever, they're going to be sitting there like firing at somebody, and then all you got to do is nail them with one of these little poofs, and then they got to either move or eat the shatter. And so that's a good way to stay alive. So I hope you enjoyed this thing, and I'll see you in the game. Is he an elephant? Somebody said on Reddit he was an elephant. He doesn't look like one to me. Bye.